Welcome to another live stream, Legends. Well, guys, Bitcoin has had some interesting recent developments. As always, I will go into the good, the bad, and the ugly. But full disclosure, I'm far less bearish than I have been since the start of 2025. But I still do have a couple of concerns that I want to go over. Some important levels I'm going to be watching for, and basically I'll be checking some indicators and how I like to use those, and I'll be checking a ton of Stuber fibs as always and that sort of thing. So with that, let's start off with Bitcoin on the 4 hour here. You guys, this is one of the huge red flags that has been lifted for me. There's a few, those of you who have been in my streams, you know there's a few red flags that I've been looking at for basically my bearish theories and what my invalidations are. And we are starting to get a couple of those. And the first thing here is on the 4 hour. I was very clear about watching this lower high level. We even paused at the Stuber fib, tapped it a couple of times, but eventually we ended up breaking through. We broke through that lower high resistance. I do want to check. We did even break above the 115 Stuber invalidation. So being that bearish Stuber on this downtrend on the 4 hour was invalidated, that gives me a lot of hope for the bulls. As far as structure goes, this is the first time in months that we have actually ended up breaking a lower high on the trend. That's just what it is. Now that this has happened, here's the thing, guys. Even though this is bullish to me, this structure is now looking bullish on the 4 hour here. Understand that I do believe a pullback will happen either way, because right now it is honestly starting to look a little toppy. Might not. I'm going to go into that in a bit, but understand that even with this bullish structure break, and even though I'm starting to turn my bias a little more bullish for now, understand that does not mean that Bitcoin needs to go straight to the upside. Bitcoin loves to range, and the market does not generally go one direction for all too long. So yeah, it's possible we do get a nice break out to much higher prices. I'll go over some targets in a little bit here. But what I would love to see, and you guys know that if this was a 5 minute or a 1 minute chart, now that we have this structure, this is where I can finally pull a bullish Stuber fib, right? That's why I have this Fibonacci laid out from a bullish perspective now with my purple box down here, is because we broke the lower high. Before, if I was just, this would have worked out. To be fair, if you pulled a fib like this, it ended up being a double bottom. But if you were buying in that level, yeah, sure, it worked out. But that was not a Stuber fib, right? So I'm just going into the exact details with the Stuber fib. We now have the structure for it. So now I have my fib pull. The thing is, guys, a lot of people are going to get very scared, very panicky down at this level if we start going down to those levels. And that's totally normal, because people love to panic at support. People get bearish at support just like they get FOMO basically right at resistance. So pulled the opposite way, right? So if this was a 5 minute or a 1 minute chart, the trade setup I would be looking for is not so much now that we broke this, hey, time to trade bullish. It's more so that, hey, we had this structure, now we can get some sort of a pullback. I have no idea how it's going to happen, right? And honestly, guys, this might not even happen, right? Something to consider is it's not like we have to come back down to this level. It's just that if we do, I'm going to be looking for long setups at that point. Even if I'm in a nice short, I'll at least be looking for hedging along at those levels if we get there. I feel very, very different about this chart structure than I did when we were trading at this level here, basically. If we stopped at this level and went down, I would not have been bullish at this level. The reason for that is because the downtrend would not have been broken in that case. But since it has, I feel very different about this support level now as far as looking for a long setup. And again, it might not happen. Maybe FOMO kicks in and the market just decides to go parabolic from here. Well, whatever. I generally trade the shorter time frames anyways, but that's just more so a big level of interest to me, right? If we start pulling back, this is just so I'm not going to panic if we come back down to these levels. That would be around 79k down towards 76k. I'm not going to panic if we go down to those levels, because I think it would be very likely, especially it'll kind of depend what the RSI is doing as well. But I think that it'll be a great opportunity to get in some long positions down there. Another reason why I think it's very possible that we do get a reversal here, and I mean, we'll have to see, but right here, basically, we ended up losing this block here. So we are kind of regaining. Well, we're struggling with it right now. But basically, we ended up losing that support here. So there is potential for, this is actually very messy with the wick, finding support in the wick. This is very messy. But we are starting to see some weakness in the indicators as well, right? So that structure break, that's questionable, honestly. The RSI has dropped from very overbought conditions down into regular territory. Now, this will look quite familiar to my weekly chart, right? What led me to be bearish at the start of January, basically, was an RSI divergence very similar to that, right? If the RSI gets back into overbought conditions, then I think that's invalidated. And that actually just shows that we have a shit ton of buying pressure, right? Relative strength index. If we get in, and especially that we're in an uptrend right now, if we get back into that overbought conditions, that doesn't necessarily mean we're overbought. It means that there's a lot of strength, right? I mean, if you were trying to play this in the uptrend as being overbought, I mean, look where it went overbought, was basically right here. Still got a huge move because a lot of strength in the market, right? It's more so when we lose that strength. That's where it's got my attention from a bearish perspective. Not while we were up here, but after we lose that. Another thing to mention is the Wave Master down here. Notice that it is looking, well, fairly overextended as well, right? We have that bright red box here. We got this reversal warning here. Or this pivot point. We have the high frequency trading bots starting to push the downside a little more. You know, there's just potential here for, it just looks like there's a little bit of a shift of momentum. Obviously, if we invalidate all these signs, our RSI ends up back into overbought conditions. Like I said, we end up breaking these highs, then great. You know what? As far as the trend goes, we have a new confirmed higher low. So at that point, as long as we're above this level, it'll remain bullish. That would be a nice confirmation to have. And at that point, I'll be bullish on this little run to the upside again. But there's just starting to be those signs that we might be a little overextended. And again, even if we are bullish right now, it would make perfect sense to retest down below 80K. And people would be in panic mode if that happens. Honestly, I'll be looking for longs down there. Also, guys, another big red flag of mine, obviously, was the RSI on the weekly. Like I said, that divergence, right? It's not so much when we're overbought, it's when we lose that. And that is that divergence that I called right before Christmas. I was talking about a potential double top with that divergence. The fact that we got that, and we have now finally, after, what was that, since the end of December, basically end of January, we started that downtrend, right? January 20th, we topped. And ever since, we've been following that divergence line. But now that we broke that, that's a huge green flag for me. Also, the Wave Master, it hasn't printed a pivot yet, but it is starting to look like it's a little overextended to the downside there. So getting a nice bounce here, you know, I totally see the opportunity from a bullish perspective now. You know, a lot of people think that I'm a perma bear, and it's not so much that I'm FOMOing into this rally here. Like I said, I would still prefer to get some sort of a retest to get my more optimal bullish positions or whatever. But here's the thing, guys. So those are two big red flags of mine that have been lifted after several months of being on my radar. That is a very good sign. Here's my concern, is that to me, the structure did already break on the weekly chart, right? We lost this range support. If this was 5 minute or a 1 minute, actually up here would have been the level, right? This would have been our high, higher low. We end up losing that. Well, at that point, you guys know I would be looking for a Stuber setup. And I know it seems like it's been a long time, but this is a weekly chart. We haven't even tested that Stuber setup yet. That is obviously possible to go up towards 115K. After that, it would be invalidated. So yeah, those are big numbers. That would be a big swing still. But that doesn't necessarily mean, as soon as we start getting near all-time highs, we start pushing to 100K, you are going to see the FOMO on social media go crazy again, just like we always do when we test into resistance, right? Like I was saying before, people get very scared at support and people get very excited at resistance. It's just human emotion. And that's where these Fibonacci's help us keep our emotions at bay. And sure, you know what? It's absolutely possible that we end up mooning to the upside and we just go parabolic from there. At that point, I'm just going to be playing the uptrend. But as it stands right now, something that concerns me with this, and something that I would not be too surprised to see, just like we did when I was talking about it around Christmas, it would make a lot of sense to see something like this and get a rejection off that level while seeing the RSI do something like this. Right? Just like what we did back here, but on a much bigger scale. Now that actually did end the previous market cycle, right? We had something like that where we had our gigantic divergence to that 70 level and we ended up nuking, right? That even would have been, watch this, I'm just taking a crack at it here, but yeah, a Stuber fib setup with that divergence would have worked out on the macro scale on the weekly like that. So guys, like I said, this is why I love playing that strategy, right? Because it just helps you keep things in perspective, looking at things very, very systematically. Because even in a case like this, it called it, right? The weekly chart, the 4-hourly chart, the 5-minute, the 1-minute, I look at market structure the same on any time frame, right? Doesn't matter if it's a longer time frame, it just takes a lot longer to play out, right? And people were so bullish at this level. That was at the top of last cycle as we were approaching it. But again, look at this divergence, right? We're attacking the same resistance that we couldn't really break last time with a ton of buying strength there. We were approaching the same resistance with significantly less strength. Why would it make sense to go parabolic from there? If you break that divergence and invalidate it and just continue to the upside, yeah, sure, at that point, then, put on the astronaut suit, absolutely. But this is something that does really have my attention right now, just because of how fast we're going right back up towards our resistance. That's something that I got to keep on my radar, guys. And again, if it gets invalidated, then I think, you know what? Yeah, at that point, I'll be a moon boy just like everybody else. But there is still resistance up ahead. I just want to make that clear because FOMO is going to be very difficult to resist at these levels. And that goes for myself as well, you guys. Basically, I talk about these things as much as I can because I want it drilled into my brain that when we get to these levels, I want to approach it with a level head, right? I'm totally okay being bullish up to that point. When we get there, it's not even that I'll necessarily be bearish yet until we get some sort of a rejection, right? It's just that I will at least be cautious once we get to that level. That's the thing, is I know a lot of people get greedy and get FOMO at resistance. I would rather be buying support and selling resistance personally, or at least if I think this is going to go parabolic and the indicators aren't really agreeing with that being a top, then I'll at least be a little hands-off, taking some profits, just managing my risk a little tighter from a bullish perspective at that point. And then once the trend looks like it's reversing on some shorter time frames in those levels, that's when I will start to get more and more openly bearish, just like I did last time. The monthly chart, also still a huge concern of mine. You guys have seen this a few times now, but all these order blocks, when they break, they generally flip from, in this case, resistance into support. That was even COVID. Over here, we actually flipped support into resistance. And this is a monthly chart, you guys. This is very serious structure. Back here, resistance into support. And now, so far, this is the first time this market cycle we've seen it, right? But we ended up losing that block flipping it from support, and right now we are testing those levels as resistance. We might wick above it, but honestly, just again, it's just something to keep on the radar. The monthly time frame is a very serious thing. We have never in Bitcoin's history had one of those structure breaks on the monthly and then reversed it again right away. Not to say it can't happen, just up until this point in the last decade or so, the only few times that we've had this kind of market structure on the monthly, it has been a full-on market reversal. Another thing that has been 100% accurate on the monthly is the wave master, right? Every time that it got one of these bearish crosses, it has been bear market on. Even though we got a second pump here, like I said, that was a perfect Stuber fib setup actually. But that was the trigger warning that, hey, it was happening. That was the start of the bear market. Down here, start of the bull market. Down here, basically, well, yeah, start of the bull market. Perfect bottom there. So right now, again, we just confirmed this last month. Well, actually the start of this month, because it was just last month's candle close. So basically April 1st, we confirmed this cross on the wave master indicator. That's a huge shift in momentum there. And it's not just that it's crossed, but it was also showing to be overextended and then crossed. And that's a pretty big concern of mine, honestly. So again, it's not so much that I'm bearish right now. It's just that I don't know if this pump is going to actually be an all-time high breakout. I think that there's room for more upside, but I just don't know if it's going to go all the way. Let's look at some shorter time frames. 4 hour we already went over. Let's hop right into the 1 minute, you guys. Again, just kind of want to talk about Stuber fibs a little bit, and I know these are going to be in hindsight, but I think it's just the more you see this structure, the more you will see it. Today is a perfect example of why I love this trade strategy, right? It has no emotions attached. It's just you're looking for certain structure breaks, and then you're looking for that retracement. Sometimes you don't get them. That's trading. But you, if you wait for those entries, it's just one of my favorite trade strategies, right? And all of these purple boxes here that I have outlined have been Stuber fib setups basically over the course of the day. So here, basically, so we lost our uptrend here. We had a higher high, we had a higher high, we had our confirmed higher low. That broke. This is my bearish confirmation that now we can start pulling a fib from this reversal point. So that's where I pull a fib, something like so. And I just chase the price, right? I have no idea where it's going to stop. I'm just chasing it and waiting until the price bounces back. And look at that. All of a sudden we get a test of the 786 and we end up reversing, easily hit my two take profits, the 0.5 and the 214. So a beautiful setup off that purple box right there. After that, we eventually, well, actually this downtrend here. So this did start a micro downtrend. So this basically, yeah, after this, obviously we had lower low, lower low, lower low, lower low. So eventually that trend broke actually down here. And that's another perfect example of, hey, we ended up breaking this micro downtrend eventually. So if I pull a Fibonacci from that point and just start looking for when is the price going to come back down to this level, eventually it did. It did go lower, but it never did break my 115. And we ended up recovering from there, obviously hit my take profits there. Let me just erase some stuff here. Then same thing, we end up just... so after that, we end up setting a lower low, lower low, lower low. So now we know that the highest point between the two is our lower high, something right here. So just start pulling a fib. I mean, technically, if you were front running it a little bit, you could have even caught a scalp off that one. But even if you didn't, we're looking at pulling, and eventually that's the low we ended up at. And then notice that we ended up testing that purple box a couple of times. We did hit the first take profit. No idea if it's going to play out from here, but at least it did play out once. So as far as scalping entries, it's just one of my favorite ways to trade a range, basically. Oh, Even if you want to micro analyze and get into some smaller structure, notice here's an example. On this uptrend right here, we just set a series of higher high, that's our higher low. This is micro analyzing, but really this is how the structure is here. And then higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. We end up breaking that. Here's our confirmation. And that's where I start pulling my fib from then, right? From where we reversed from that structure break, and just pulling a Fibonacci and just seeing where we end up testing that 786, 886. Notice never happened, never happened. Go down further and notice that we did end up getting it, right? I don't know why this isn't lining up. It must have moved when I was changing charts or something. But basically, yeah, that called one of those scalp setups, right? We get into the 786. We end up hitting the 0.5 fib. At that point, totally depends on your risk appetite, I suppose. When markets are really volatile like today, I have been just basically taking some profits at my 0.5 fibs. I've been updating my stop loss to break even. And from there, I just see what happens. Sometimes, yeah, it gets stopped out earlier than I'd like, but honestly, this market is so volatile right now that, I mean, here's a perfect example. We're just blasting to the upside. But yeah, generally speaking, I like to hit my 2 take profits, my 214 before I update my stop loss. But when things are volatile, I don't mind tightening up my risk a little bit further. But yeah, some nice scalp entries off those. So far we've had some nice ones today, and that brings me to hype, something that I noticed just earlier when I was just looking at it for a second, is we have that sort of structure break here. Rather, if you want to look at it as an order block, something like that, for this candle right here. Notice from there we were able to push higher. We ended up losing that block. So at that point, that's where I'm looking at, well, we do have a bearish structure break. So if this is going to reverse here, I mean, right now, notice where we are struggling. Well, it already played out technically, right? We hit the 0.5 fib already in the very next candle. It's a 4 hour, so it might have taken a while to play out. But again, that's just a beautiful scalp entry, even if you're considering this a scalp on the 4 hour or whatever. Notice that if you took the pullback on the 786, hit your first target already. So it's interesting to see that basically, you know, when structure breaks, the market makers or whoever, the market's emotions, whoever, it just shows that those Fibonacci's, like how often when after you get a structure break of any kind, you almost retrace the whole move. You go back, well, 78.6% of the way, almost every time, right? Sometimes it takes a while, sometimes it doesn't happen, but it's just, I would always rather be getting into a position on a retracement rather than trying to play a breakout, because with a breakout, your invalidation, I guess depending how you play it, but your invalidation can be significantly further away if you're not playing proper market structure. Whereas if you're more so waiting to, like what I'm saying on the 4 hour with Bitcoin, how I'm looking at playing along on the pullback, because that structure is there, but I don't want to, and honestly it could just break out from here, right? But I would feel much better about getting into a long position down here than I would as soon as we started breaking out. Of course, unless I was on a shorter time frame, I got into a position and it happened to turn into a runner, which generally that's how I like to trade. I like to enter on lower time frame, higher leverage kind of positions. That's where I take my scalp profits and hope that some of the position runs. But just that, it would make a lot of sense to get some sort of a pullback to this level eventually. So we'll see what happens. Or maybe we go a little bit higher and then we get it. If we just end up continuing higher from here, a way that I could play it is like I was talking about earlier. If we end up breaking these highs here, then we now have a higher high. So we have a confirmed higher low. And at that point, we can either start chasing the micro trend further with a new little fib, or just kind of playing the breakout, but at least you have some sort of an invalidation level at that point, right? Right now, I don't really have that because since this is basically the first break since this lower high, we don't have more structure on a micro trend yet. That's where if we got something like this, now we can start playing the uptrend more aggressively. But we'll see. Like I said, there's reason to believe that this could be reversing fairly soon. The RSI is trying to go into overbought conditions again, though. Like I said, we break those highs, and then we can just hope that the price is going to continue staircasing higher. We'll at least have invalidation points at that point. What else was I going to check out? I was going to check out, sorry, we went over hype already. Like I said, we're at resistance. Maybe it breaks out as well, because realistically, if Bitcoin breaks out, a lot of altcoins are probably going to be breaking out as well. But we are at the start of resistance either way. Actually, I want to start zooming in a little bit. Let's check out the 5-minute. See, I don't actually have a bearish Stuber on the 5-minute yet, because this is not the structure break, because if this is my higher high, my higher low is actually down here. So notice here's another perfect example, right? If you pulled that fib looking for that scalp, boom, damn near the second take profit. Yeah, it's close, but if that's the size of range you're playing, I mean, I always say it, I trade the range first and then hope for a runner with the part of my position. And if this is the fib pull that you're pulling, that means that is the range that you are playing, right? So as this looks right here, I mean, that was just a beautiful Stuber setup right there. See, same thing. When we ended up losing this structure, or actually even call it this one just to play it safe, we obviously lost that uptrend, start pulling a fib. We ended up testing the 786. Obviously that has already played out technically. It did hit the 0.5 fib target, but then that mini bullish one also played out, right? You just, like I said, guys, everyone trades different time frames. Everyone trades different size ranges. And today's video is basically an example of that, of just showing so many different sizes of these and just how the structure works. And it doesn't really matter what kind of time frames you're looking at, right? It's more of just market structure acts the same on all time frames. It's just that some of it plays out quicker than others. There's always smaller ranges inside bigger ranges, inside bigger ranges, in bigger ranges, bigger ranges, bigger ranges. So it all depends. And like I said, that pulling Fibonacci's like that is a perfect way to keep everything systematic, because as I mentioned, if you pull a Fibonacci, that is the range that you're playing. You have your targets, you have your entries. Everything is laid out for you. Obviously with the Stuber fibs, for example, I mean, everyone might see things a little bit different, and maybe you don't catch the market structure the same way I do. Always important to do some back testing on your own, but yeah, it's just and there's so many different strategies that you could come up with, but I still think that, you know, with confluence for me on a Stuber fib is obviously certain structure breaks, but someone else might have different confluences. But if you can still throw a Fibonacci retracement tool in there, I mean, it's such a good way to spot entries and take profits and that sort of thing. But again, you just have to back test and find a strategy that works for you, basically. If I get into a runner, how do I exit from the runner? Like, what am I looking at to exit? Basically, when I get into a running position, if I happen to notice a structure change on a lower time frame, for example, if I'm in a short and all of a sudden we lose, let's say we start trending to the downside aggressively. Here, let me actually draw this out. Here, let's just say I am You know, we have a structure break here. I end up taking a short. Let's just see how my eyeball is there. Let's just say I end up taking a short on something like that because we lost this structure, if that makes sense. So if I was in a short from something like that, obviously it's hit my 2 take profits, and then let's just say I'm in a running position and it just starts trending to the downside aggressively like this. I would start basically any time I noticed a change in structure like this, for example, on a lower time frame. At that point, I would be just manually closing part of my position, or if I have a trailing stop loss with part of my position, using a trigger order, for example. If I see structure forming and I am willing to watch my position, then I will just manually bump a part of a trigger order stop loss on structure like that. And to be fair, it could just end up continuing trending to the downside from there. But that's why, again, I would just kind of take partial profits on the position again and hope that the position continues the downtrend again anyways. But anytime there was a change like this, I would just be considering it a bit of a warning that things could reverse. They don't have to, but they could reverse at that point. So I would be looking at taking more profits. Another thing to look for would be, like, for example, me, I like to look at the trend master indicator. You guys have seen me mention this many times, but I love looking for which way these signals are trending, basically. So we have, well, these are basically a double top, but let's call it lower sell, lower sell, lower sell, lower sell. Well, now that I believe we're going to get a higher sell at this point, which leads me to believe we'll probably get a higher buy signal as well. Even if it's if we get a sell reversal here, I think it'll be short-lived and we'll get a higher buy signal. That's just a change in a trend using an indicator, right? I know a lot of people only use indicators for trying to force themselves into more trades that might not necessarily be there. Honestly, one of my favorite things to do with any indicator is using them as risk management, or, you know, downsizing a position, for example. The fact that we ended up breaking this structure, if this sell signal printed here, that means that this structure is basically the top of where we pivoted there. The fact that we broke above that structure, if I was still in a short here, actually that's funny, I am in part of a short from 101.6k, and I never did adjust that, but I've taken good profits on that one. But here's an example of using the indicator. Here's our sell signal. This is where it pivoted from. We break that structure, which also happens to be our lower high. At that point, then I'm willing to take more profits off of a short. Again, just using indicators for not necessarily just entering positions, but also taking profits, risk management, all that sort of thing. So I think that's one thing that gets seriously overlooked with indicators in general. I think a lot of people just use them to try and force entries on themselves. That sounds bad. Whoops. Might have ranted a little there, but hopefully that answered your question. Deep. I did promise I would look at deep. Let's check out the 4 hour. So it's still in a nice uptrend. Basically, we have an order block down here still. Even if we end up going to the downside here, don't really have too much concerns yet. But that being said, if we end up breaking that sort of structure, then I think it would be very possible that it would be, you know, something like this. Pulling back to some fibs a little further down. That would be very healthy, in my opinion, anyways. Yeah, this is nice. It's obviously broken some very nice structure. You know, I was paying attention to this coin for a while and I kind of forgot about it. But man, that was a basically from here, beautiful structure break there. Low. Oh, no, actually a little bit lower. Again, micro analyzing, but it stands. The structure is there. We had a low here. We found a little bounce, but then we ended up going lower, right? So lower low. Here's our lower high, the highest point between the two. And then if we just played it like a typical Stuber, I mean, I know it's a double bottom, but again, the candle bodies, yeah, just a beautiful setup there. And the structure was there on the 4 hour. That would have been beautiful. I didn't. Just to be clear, I am not in that position, unfortunately, but that's a very typical Stuber setup on a 4 hour there. And that's just to go how beautiful of running positions that you can get into with such pinpoint accurate entries like that. And it's just very basic market structure, followed by a retracement rather than FOMOing into a breakout. What kind of targets can we look for on deep? The thing is, now it's probably getting fairly close to resistance, honestly. Could go a little bit higher. But yeah, obviously it lost a very strong uptrend at this level. And so this is still obviously the pivotal point. So I still do consider this a bearish setup potentially forming. If the price on the 4 hour starts looking like it's getting toppy at this area, it could be time for a retracement. And again, doesn't even necessarily mean that it would be bearish, but it could just be getting a bullish retest. This is all very theoretical, obviously, you guys. But if we go from one Stuber, get rejected there, I would be interested in longing the bullish one. That's just basic chart structure, because the market, again, it doesn't generally, obviously sometimes it goes parabolic or sometimes it goes capitulation. I understand that that is a thing and it can happen, but generally speaking, the market loves to range. And that's where these Fibonacci's, you see them get tagged so often. So as traders, I mean, it doesn't really matter if things aren't going parabolic or not moving one direction, right? Ranges are fun to play as well. Actually, check this out. Oh, this is on logarithmic. That's why everything looks a little funny. But yeah, again, just a typical, call it a bubble pop, call it it looks, if you looked at this like a monthly chart or a weekly chart, more so a weekly chart, it would just look like a market cycle. And I mean, Bitcoin, every bull market that eventually comes to an end has respected the 786, 886 pocket as well, just like we see on the 4 hour, just like we see on the 5 minute, the 1 minute, etc. So yeah, it went a little bit lower here, but I mean, basically support would start at the 786, right? So if you were buying the 786, the 886 wouldn't have quite got your double bottom entry. But you know what? With an average entry right in the middle here, that is a beautiful take profit. Nice 118, 117% move to the upside off of that pocket, off of an average entry with a typical Stuber fib setup there. Again, not something I'm in, just showing you a good example of how it works on, you know, several different altcoins, and just how it's not even that it's my strategy, you guys. This is something I want to explain too, is this is just how basic market structure works. And human psychology, and you know, people love getting bullish as we trade into resistance, thinking that it's going to break out. That's why they're so good at those fib retracements, are so good at being bull traps and bear traps. Oh, nice, your bots picked up the trades on deep. Sick. 157% to the upside. Hell yeah, bro. I have considered a copy trade setup for my BloFin community, but I kind of want to get something automated before I would go down that road. I don't want to accidentally do something or fuck something up and have it affect you guys. I'm okay with the fact that sometimes I trade while intoxicated. I have forgot to set stop losses before going to sleep, things like that, and I don't want those types of things to happen to my followers. To be honest, it's never like that sort of thing has actually never got me in too much trouble. It's just one of those things where I've woke up in a panic and been like, shit, I don't know if I set my trades properly or whatever. If I'm tired and falling asleep and I get into a scalp or something, I just honestly, it's not even that it's a likely thing. It's just I don't want that on my conscience if it happens to someone else. So I'd way rather have something automated before I do any sort of copy trading. All right, guys, let's get into some real shitties here. Um, this one was just on my radar, guys. I want full disclosure: meme coins are a total gamble. Um, I have caught a nice play on this one before, and there's a lot of meme coins with low market caps that are starting to look like they could be bottoming, forming rounding bottoms, breaking a little bit of structure and that sort of stuff. So decide to look at some meme coins and buy some small spot bags of a few of them. But this is one that I think the indicators are starting to look pretty good on, and so is the structure. The fact that we've basically had low, this is the 4 hour, you guys, and this is only like a $2.5 million market cap or something like that. The IQ 6900. On the 4 hour, the trend master called, we had this beautiful sell signal, but then we also set a lower sell, lower sell, lower sell, lower sell. And as I was talking about with the structure with those sell signals, when they're trending like that, if we go to where we pivoted from with our last lower sell signal there, we've actually invalidated that trend. So to me, yeah, we might pull back a little bit, but that's a nice structure break, and that hasn't happened, well, since January. And the fact that it's such a low market cap, I was willing to toss a little gamble size spot bag at this. But yeah, there was a Stuber fib yesterday or a few days ago that I was buying this. But yeah, hope. Like I said, there's just there's a little bit of hopium in the market. Bitcoin had a nice rally there. It broke some serious structure. What I'm really interested to see now, actually, you guys, is what happens. Like, a lot of altcoins are starting to look quite good. And if altcoins like Ethereum, higher market cap coins, as well as some of the smaller ones, if altcoins start going nuts, but Bitcoin is not, like if Bitcoin's actually starting to retrace and altcoins start popping off, I'm going to have some very strong concerns about the market at that point as well, because that's what happened the last couple bear markets when they started, was basically when Bitcoin had finally topped out, that money kind of flew into altcoins and stuff just for a temporary pump, and then after that it was a harsh dose of reality, right? When everyone got FOMO thinking it was altcoin season and that sort of stuff, then it all came to an end after that in previous cycles. So that is something that I would look for. If, however, Bitcoin and altcoins and everything are kind of moving up together, then I think that's just showing confidence in the market, just showing money flowing into the market. And I think we still look healthy at that point. So we're just going to have to see. It's just kind of something on my radar to watch for is all. But like I said, even if Bitcoin pulls back from this point, I'm looking for long setups at that. Something like so. I don't know if I'm lucky enough to get it, but if I get it, I'll take it. That doesn't mean that, again, guys, I have mixed feelings as far as like the long-term trend of Bitcoin right now. I am so on the fence whether or not the market has topped. Because like I was saying with the weekly chart, the fact that we broke that divergence, that's a very strong bullish signal to me. My big concern with that, again, just in case some of you guys weren't here at the beginning, is that a divergence like this, it's very much looking like it could be a possibility if Bitcoin gets back up to resistance, either my Stuber fib or double top territory, and we have a divergence on the RSI like this. I'm going to have some serious issues with the market once again. And that is what led me to be bearish for this whole 30% drop, right? Was just that double top with that bearish divergence here. And if we get a much bigger one, like I was talking about at the start of my stream, it's very possible that we end up seeing something like that again. I personally think that if we get it, I don't know if we're even going to get the failed break above like we did last cycle. I think that's almost too predictable because it's already happened. Just it's fresh in everyone's mind from last cycle, and everyone's going to think the same thing happens. I wouldn't be surprised to see us actually only make it to the 786 or the 886, and rather than actually testing new all-time highs, it gets cut short when a lot of people are thinking we're going to get one more pump. So again, it totally depends how this forms, because if the RSI goes straight into overbought conditions again, then I just think that we're going to break right through. But if we get that divergence, I will have issues. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting... I know this wasn't actually a bearish Stuber fib, but it would be again, a 786. It's crazy how much those fib retracements are actually respected. I know a lot of people prefer the 618. I personally prefer the 786, 886. But quite often when those levels get respected, you'll see like a candle body will respect the 618, and then a wick will hit the 786, for example. That's very common for candles to do things like that. Did I look at Trump? I have not yet, and I will. I know it pumped, but it's I have to look at something like, oh, I haven't looked at it since I saw that it had pumped like 50% yesterday or something like that, or even more. Let me take a peek. I have mixed feelings about this, honestly. It's obviously broken a ton of structure. That much is for sure. Oh god, there was a beautiful retracement there. Beautiful. Oh, perfect Stuber fib entry there if you would have taken that, but obviously I didn't. But so we've broken a lot of structure. There's no questioning that. I don't know if this is correct, but I think I recall token, like a big token unlock being fairly soon. Can anybody confirm that? I thought I remember hearing that there's a big Trump token unlocking soon, and it would be very funny and honestly a little bit predictable, and like, how could you not see it if that is the case, that he would shill something like that right as they're about to unlock a ton of tokens? Or it did happen already? Yeah, so the top 220 holders or whatever get invited to a big dinner with them. Honestly, I wouldn't want to spend millions of dollars to have somebody tell me how much better they are at everything in life than me all night, but to each their own. But yeah, I'm curious if that token unlock did already happen. Okay, so nothing crazy in the next few days. What are the shorter time frames looking like? 1 hour. See, I don't consider this a loss of a higher low because technically we had the wick way up here and that was nowhere near being broken. If we could break above this level, I think it's quite likely that we would retest the top of this wick, fill the wick. Nice little 20% move to the upside. That wouldn't really surprise me. What is the trend master saying? Oh, finding support on a beautiful buy signal there. Obviously, the trending to the downside sell signals has broken as well, because even if we get a sell signal, it's going to be a higher sell signal, in which case I would be interested in longing a higher buy signal. Or right now, I mean, I'm personally not taking the long, but you know what? We are technically at support. Nice tight invalidation. What's the shorter time frames looking like? This looks a little worse. The shorter time frames may have broke some structure. 1 second. So notice that same rip to the upside. If we zoom into the 5 minute, we have a little different structure, right? We have this high, and when we broke it, we went higher. Let's just go from our wick here. We did end up breaking that. So technically on the 5 minute, we do have bearish structure at this point, and I think that it does make a lot of sense that we would retrace most of this move. Can we find anything on the micro trend with this? Where is... So this would be my last low, lower low. We have not been below that level yet, so low, lower low, confirmed lower high. So as long as we stay below, what is that, 12,666. Interesting number for the guy. But look at this. Obviously, it already happened, so that nice trade setup technically already happened. As far as the Stuber setup goes, I really like taking the first test of these levels. Now that it's already hit its first 2 range targets there, the move has happened already. It's a little less likely to have, or it's just a little added risk to try and play it again. But again, as far as the downtrend goes, as long as we are below this level here on the micro trend, we are still trending to the downside. I'll do this one yellow, just so that if we break that, then I know that I can move my lower high a little bit. If we end up breaking this, then this would be the highest point between the two. So it's not like it's it's not a huge change, but it would be a change. What is the trend master saying? We have lower buy signals, lower sell signals. If we get another sell signal here, that might be an okay opportunity to get into a little bit of a tighter scalp. Like right now, being we have lower sell signals, I could also treat that as resistance. Either way, there's resistance ahead if it climbs a little on the 5 minute here, right? Oh. I have so much going. I gotta reload this chart. I have way too much shit going on. So right now, this is our lower low. This would be our lower high. And notice where we are struggling. Right at the 886. You know what? I'll ladder some shorts into that. Sorry, one sec. And the invalidation is actually very close to the pivotal point of the trend in general. So, yeah, I'm keeping my stop loss above this guy. We'll see. Doesn't have to play out, because here's one thing to consider, guys. I will mention the added risk, because when there's added risk, I always keep my positions a little bit smaller. The fact that this position, again, as a Stuber setup, it's already played out once. Not perfectly, but I'm going to consider this a 786 touch, and it went back down to the 0.5 fib. Same with here. We got to the 786, and we got very close to the first target. So technically, I would consider this as played out once already, so there is just that added risk factor. But resistance is resistance until it's broken, so see what happens. Holy smokes. Yeah, we broke these. Yeah, like I said, there's some added risk to this one, but holy smokes. I've been here for over an hour already. Yeah, any other altcoins that anyone wants me to specifically look at? Oh yeah, that IQ. Big brain shit. Rocket's not in here, is he? No. He loves this coin. Yeah, that's looking good. It's not quite a higher buy signal, but basically double bottom. And like I said, with the lower sell signal trend breaking, and just overall, let's just zoom out. It looks like we're starting to break the resistance on this indicator on the daily. But yeah, also just pointing out where we ended up finding support. There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of low cap meme coins that just kind of look like they're finding support somewhat. They're flatlining a little bit. And again, they're obviously very high risk, 100% a gamble in my opinion. Position sizing should reflect that. But yeah, I see potential on some. Yeah, like I said, I think this is like a $2.5 million market cap, something like that. So high risk. Risky as shit, but high risk, high reward, hopefully. I think last time, what did I catch? Like a 25x or something like that on this thing? I can't remember. Oh, it might have been a lot bigger. I might have got in back here. Yeah, yeah, it was a big one either way. Hopefully it does it again. No promises. Not financial advice. Well, guys, yeah. Does anyone else have any other requests? Any other altcoins you want me to look at? Any specific time frames? Anything like that? Bitcoin looks like we are struggling with that resistance I just pointed out. You know my thoughts on the market. Honestly, like I said, the long-term trend, I have mixed feelings. It's more so I want to see what the weekly does if and when we get up to this Stuber fib / double top area. I really want to see what the RSI is saying at that point, and yeah, we'll go from there. I have a feeling that we're going to get up to these levels. We're going to see a big ass bearish divergence here. We are going to see social media posts going absolutely ridiculous with targets of, you know, $500,000 to $2 million US dollars and shit like that, just to have those dreams crushed. I don't know, just a gut feeling at this point, just because those monthly concerns are still there. But like I said, guys, if the RSI goes into overbought conditions, if we break these highs, anything like that, yeah, I'll be a moon boy as well. Actually, I shouldn't say break these highs, because there is wiggle room for a liquidity grab. But if we actually start staircasing higher, I mean, it is what it is, right? I'll be looking at shorter time frames, and if we end up breaking this resistance and we just keep staircasing on, setting higher highs and higher lows, I mean, I'm going to play the trend at that point, but I'm going to be cautious at these levels, if nothing else. PP poo poo coin. Honestly, you might be actually requesting that. I never know in these markets anymore. Is that bio or blow? Bio USD. Doesn't look like it's on BloFin, so I will check on Binance. Oh, 1 hour? Let's see what we've got here. Start with a naked chart. All right. I love that it broke this structure here. I don't love that it broke this structure here. So right now I would be basically, you know, as we get towards resistance of this, just basically what we have to consider is for both scenarios here, bullish and bearish. For a bearish scenario here, we have this structure break where we lost our higher low on the micro trend. So this is our bearish pivotal point, obviously, because it's the highest thing around, but there's actual structure confirming that. So I would be looking at resistance stepping in right around 80 cents at the 786. That's just the start of resistance, right? This whole area is fair game for rejection, basically, if we get up that high. But that being said, from a bullish perspective, there could be a long opportunity or a buy setup as well, because on the opposite side of things, we did break that immediate downtrend right here. Bullish. So if we got a pullback to this level, we technically have support down here now as well. So that's basically how I would be viewing that right now. That's the obvious range to me on the 1 hour. If we end up breaking these highs, so let's say we end up doing something like this. Obviously the path, who knows, but if this is the end result, then at that point, I think that there'd be a great long opportunity, because it could be staircasing higher, but that doesn't mean longing right after the structure break, right? That's what I like to do, is wait for that retracement after the structure break. And that's where if we got something like that, I would be looking at trying to play the continuation, because we'd have new structure there. We would have a new bullish Stuber fib, and it would be something like that. Obviously taking profits along the way, just in case it doesn't continue going to the upside, but that would be beautiful structure. But yeah, as it stands right now, this is the range that I see. If the price ends up doing something like this, we would now have a low and lower low. That means this would be our lower high, right? This is theoretical. I'm not saying we're topping out here or anything, but then we could start pulling a new, a smaller range, trying to chase the trend basically, because if it's, oh shucks, I missed my short entry, I wasn't able to get a short entry where I wanted. At this point, if we got this kind of a structure break, then we could be looking for a new short somewhere over here. If the micro trend breaks though, then you obviously still have your resistance up ahead, but that would be a situation with the structure break that you may end up getting into a position that way. All depends how the structure forms, right? Structure can often look very similar, but have very different candle structure in the chart. Even that, what was it, deep, when I was looking at the 1 hour and then the 5 minute, it was actually very different. Even though the price did the same thing, it was very different structure. I better erase that just so we don't confuse anybody. There's the range. The RSI. If it climbs higher and the RSI starts testing the 70 level, something like that, I think it would be the perfect short opportunity. But again, just like what I was talking about with Bitcoin, if that RSI goes back into overbought conditions, then I don't consider that divergence valid. So it really depends how it forms there, but that would be an ideal situation. That's basically like my favorite confluence to go with Stuber fib setups, or double tops, whatever you want to call it, would be something like that. Stacks. Not on BloFin. I will look at Binance. The 4 hour, you say, yes? Yeah, 4 hour. Yeah, very nice structure break there as well. Here we had our low, lower low, confirmed lower high, broken. Again, this is one of those things that now that structure broke, if we can either set a new higher high, that would make me quite bullish, because at that point we have a confirmed higher low. Whereas right now, how this structure is, since this is just now our higher high, right? Since we broke this level. So invalidation to me is still way down here, but it's one of those things, and depending how you play it, right? This is just my personal preference, but I would love to either get that kind of a structure break where we start staircasing higher and then we can start pulling a new micro fib, something like that. Or we do end up topping out here, getting a little bit of a reversal, but getting a beautiful long opportunity down here. All very theoretical. It's just one of those things. If we get down to those levels, oh, for Christ's sake, I'm not even on the right chart. I thought I changed the chart. Did I not? Jeepers. I mean, the structure's the same. Everything I just said stands the same. Jesus, have another one. So yeah, obviously we broke that structure. So here's the thing. Actually, the micro trend is different. So here's a perfect example live for you guys that, hey, we have this high and we have set a higher high again. So we now have a confirmed higher low. So I'm actually going to put this right here. Yeah, I agree. That looks beautiful. Good eye. If that structure can continue staircasing like that, I mean, that was perfect. There, it already happened once, right? But the structure never really changed. But here we had our high and higher high on the micro trend, confirmed higher low, beautiful double bottom. Stuber fib would have worked out beautiful as well. But either way, we have that structure, and now that we set another higher high, I mean, structure didn't really change. For that, well, sorry, structure changed, but the higher low didn't really change. So at this point, yeah, looking for long opportunities as far as the 4 hour goes, I would just be basically following the price until we either set a new higher high and higher low, or we pull back, something like that. Beautiful, beautiful opportunity for, as long as that keeps trending, right? As soon as we lose a higher low like that, well, at that point, like if the price ended up, let's say I go for this long, it gets invalidated, I would be looking at a short, something like that, because then we would have that broken structure followed by a pullback. But yeah, as it stands right now, I love it. Looks great. Here, I'll even zoom in a little bit. What's the 1 hour saying? The 1 hour, you could even raise your support right around there. High, higher high, higher high, higher low. Yeah, that looks good. Like really, even the daily. Even the daily broke that structure because that was our lower high. Because low, lower low, lower high. That was broken, so there's our new high, and we've set a higher high, so technically this is our confirmed higher low on the daily as well. So yeah, that's serious structure in my opinion. But again, if we get a big red engulfing daily candle and lose that higher low on the micro trend, then I have my concerns again. But as it stands right now, I love to see it because that has tightened up our invalidation significantly. Are we looking for a long on BTC 5 minute around 93.2? Let me... I'm not... Honestly, even down here, I'm not overly interested on a 5 minute long on Bitcoin right now. Because since we had this low... Oh, no, I stand corrected. I would consider hedging along if we end up down around 92.2 to 91.9. So just like I laid out earlier with what was that bio with the structure. So this would now be the range that I'm interested in on Bitcoin 5 minute. Obviously pulling fibs, there's a little wiggle room for liquidity grabs. But yeah, I'd be interested in looking for a hedge long off these levels. laddering in something like that. If we even get there, right? We might just end up pumping to the upside from here. We'll see. But I like this. I really like this. I don't like this. This is to be determined. The weekly, I do like that divergence break. Like I said, I just have my concerns. We'll see. To be determined. Anyways, legends, I think that's about all I wanted to go over today. Hopefully you guys found this stream useful. If you have any questions after, feel free to shoot me a message or in the chat, whatever. Also, those of you watching this on my YouTube channel a little later, if you want access to the MDX ALGO indicators, there's a link in the description down below. I've also got a fairly new Telegram channel where I share some of my trade ideas, scalp setups, Stuber fib levels, my general thoughts on the market. Kind of a place to keep all my thoughts in one place together. And it's completely free for people who trade on BloFin using my new sign up link, and follow the steps in the description down below. With that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Peace.